Hello and welcome to today's webinar, where Louisa and I have been looking forward to sharing an insight into Gluu's enterprise services with you. It's very much about how you scale your business process management effort. Because as you can imagine, lots of companies out there, they're successful in working a little bit with Visio and a few SharePoint sites. But if you really want to have a large impact on a large organization, then you do need method and tooling, and that's what we'll cover today. So to give you a bit of an analogy before we start, if you are going to hang a picture on a wall, then you just need a hammer and a nail. And obviously this is the right tooling for that. But if you're going to put up, say, maybe 500 meters of wooden fence, well, then probably you would like to have a nail gun. And it's a little bit the same with BPM tooling. One or two processes, a few people, just draw it on a whiteboard, just draw it on brown paper or in Visio or someplace like that. But if you really want a big effort involving your whole organization, possibly hundreds and thousands of users, then you need tooling like Gluu. So that's what we'll cover today, both the tooling but also the method part. And in this webinar, we will introduce Gluu's services to help process excellence teams in organizations with more than 500 people to succeed, where others have failed, frankly, because most of these BPM efforts tend to fail. That's the hard truth. And we have a lot of experience in why this is happening and in avoiding that it will happen from you, because usually companies come to us after they have failed with the Visio SharePoint approach. So let's look at what we'll cover today. Today, we'll be sharing something about different process maturity levels. Louisa will cover this. She's the expert on our side, and she's the one typically helping a lot of customers through these different maturity levels. In combination with this, we will also highlight some of the services we have and to train and help PEX teams. But you don't necessarily have to look at it like something you necessarily have to buy from us. It can also be used as inspiration for what has to be covered. In the same, we will also be talking about certain selected features that we are using to manage large volumes of users to ease this work. That's where the nail gun analogy comes in. And I know Louisa throughout the webinar will be covering some common mistakes and pitfalls that we see, so you can avoid making the same. The question is how you reach hundreds or possibly thousands of business users, how you engage them so they find business processes relevant, but of course also how you ensure the governance so that people and process owners move forward as fast as they can, but not faster. A little bit like the brakes of a sports car. You need to have powerful brakes because then you can go as fast as possible, but not any faster. I think it's a little bit the same with this governance, that how do you enable people to move fast without moving too fast and making errors, risks, and so on. And finally, how do we ensure a sustainable progress towards a process-driven organization? So to you to start answering them, and then I will try to play a little bit the customer, maybe ask some good questions that we so often hear. So please take us through it.
Sure. So everyone, like Søren said, what I do for Gluu is that I help our customers implement Gluu, but not only the tool, we're very focused on helping them succeeding in their process journey. Something that we see based on our experience with customers and the data we have from that is that the two major pitfalls in trying to achieve this goal of being a process-driven organization is number one, a lack of management support. A misalignment between what the process excellence team or whoever is the coach or driver on the process journey, what they want and what management want. And it's very often because management, they see process work as a project. So the team or the department working with it, they'll get 3 months, 6 months, maybe a year. And then management expects everything to be done, ready. Then we have all our processes ready and everything is just working. Instead of viewing the process journey as a strategy that you make at the top level in your organization. You decide to commit to working with processes continuously, not just for 3 months or 6 months or a year, but for the rest of the lifetime of the business, really. And that misalignment is by far the number one cause. And the second really big pitfall in succeeding with your process journey is a lack of awareness of process maturity. And that's one of the things we really want to talk to you about today, because we very often see that new customers that come to us, they're very excited to work with processes, and they finally got the business on board, and they're just ready to go, and they have this big plan for how to do it. They have goals, milestones to reach within a certain time frame. But what most of them experience is that if you're not aware of your organization and their process maturity level, then you cannot succeed with those goals. You keep losing the connection to the organization, and you have to loop back and pick the organization back up. We have quite a few customers that come to us after having that experience of completely crashing their process journey, because they couldn't get the organization to go along at that very high speed. And then they come to us and say, can you guys maybe help us how to do this? Søren, if you share the slide on process maturity, because that's always a good starting point. We develop a very, very simple model of process maturity that we work with our customers on as well. And we simply divided it into these 4 areas: standard processes, shared processes, executed processes, and what we call process-driven, that last step that's where everyone wants to go, right? But for us, it's important to communicate to customers that we understand your goal, and that's a good goal to have, but you have to take some steps before you can actually get there. You can't just start driving at full speed towards process-driven.
If I may add, earlier in Gluu's history, our ambition was that everybody should become process-driven, but we realized the larger the organization is and the harder the culture is to change, the more you need milestones and steps on the way. And that's why we developed this model, because it can take time, as our case study will show you later also makes clear, for a large organization to become process-driven. It is a long and it's a difficult journey, and it's much more than the tooling that we provide. Of course, it's a big concerted effort in the organization. Yeah.
It really is. That's so true, Søren, and I think that's what surprises a lot of our customers as well. That working with processes, they see some of the obvious benefits, like lowering cost, raising efficiency, that kind of thing. But what they're usually not very aware of is the fact that working with processes and being on a process journey is also very much interconnected with cultural change. when I say cultural change, I mean business culture. Because you have to change the mindset, not just of a part of the business, but of the whole entire business, every single employee. And we have actually structured the way that we approach this, also in terms of implementation. If our customers ask us to help them get started well on their process journey, we also work with these 4 steps. So let's switch to our website, Søren.
Sure.
So we can take a look at that. If you noticed at the very top, what it said on this one was standard processes. We want to, today in this webinar, to give you some more, instead of just talking about this at a theoretical, conceptual level, we also want to get a bit more specific on the practical side of things. So what is it you need to do to get to this step and the next step and so forth? And for this first step, this is the basic overview, so to say.
Why does a company need to get through standard processes? How would you summarize that?
In my opinion, what you need to do on this first process maturity level is to lay your process foundation. And you need to create a common starting point for the whole organization for a successful process journey.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, Louise, I think it's very much about like the lean philosophy. You need to have a current state and a shared understanding of where we are. And if you don't have an accurate picture where you are today, you have no common ground for improving, for doing anything. And that getting everyone aligned on that is a much bigger task than many people realize. And what we see, I think, a lot also is that often we get into a large organization where they have had a consultancy, a premier management consultancy, map possibly hundreds of processes at a cost of millions, and now they are in some kind of SharePoint folder somewhere, because nobody feels any sense of ownership or any relevance or any. It's not their processes. It was the mind game of management, or it was aspiration level or whatever. And what we're talking about here is something completely different that really involves the organization in co-creating, defining how you work, right? But please continue, Louise. I just wanted to add that point.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. So thank you for adding it. I mean, when we're talking about this level 1 and all the foundational work, what that means is, of course, for most of you, it's probably obvious. Well, okay, our foundation needs to be a process hierarchy. We need to decide what processes should we have in our business, what should we map, what goes where, all that stuff. And straightforward things like creating a template for processes so that you get a consistency across all your processes in terms of layout and format, making it easy for the users to read the processes. But that's just not enough. It's a good starting point, but it's not enough. And one thing we do know based on our experience is that it's very important at this stage that you align expectations across the organizations, very similar to what you said, Søren, from a lean perspective. And in particular with management, actually, because that is the number one reason why process journeys fail. And you do have to have a common starting point, and you do need common goals for your process journey, because if you do not have that, then someone will get frustrated or disappointed along the way because things are not going the way they thought they would. And it might seem a bit silly, but it's just so important. And doesn't just magically appear. You actually have to have conscious conversations about it to align all of these expectations across the organization, because that's what all our customers realize when they start talking about this. They thought that the business wanted what they want, but that's never the case. There's so many different expectations, and if you do not talk about that and get them aligned, then you're setting yourself up for failure.
But are you now referring sort of to the process hierarchy, the process catalog primarily?
No, much more to everything that's not the practical side of things. So that's also one of the reasons that if we help you in your process journey, we do not start out by training you in how to use Gluu as a tool and how to build your process hierarchy. The first thing we do is that we invite management and the process excellence team, or whoever is the driver on the process journey, to a core team training where we share all our knowledge about how to get you started right and how to help you avoid all these pitfalls and how to get your expectations aligned. We talk to you about what's a good process in general from a theoretical perspective, and then we try and help you to say transfer that into your setting. So what's a good process in your organization? And we have very good results based on that. And that first training, we get such good feedback from both from management and from the process excellence teams. They're saying, "Oh, but we didn't even think of all these questions that you're asking us, and they're so important. And how did we miss that?" And so alignment before you start doing your process hierarchy and all the practical stuff is very, very important. That is the first pillar of your process foundation, so to say.
Yeah, and I should also mention, when you, for instance, are working, many process initiatives start with an ERP project where you need to implement a new ERP project, and that's definitely when you need this alignment between around what are the objectives, but also, for instance, the process hierarchy, the catalog can be used to select exactly what's in scope, what's outside of scope. So this whole scope alignment, both in terms of what is a process, what does it look like, what is a good process, and what is the level of specification we need for each. I think that's a super important alignment, and that can also help alleviate the risk that your ERP project fails, which 70% of them do.
Yeah.
Just wanted to add that.
No, it's very true, and ERP projects are such a good example of why alignment is important. It illustrates it very well, because most of us have tried being part of an ERP implementation at one point or another in our careers, and we all know how difficult that is. It really what's the word in English? It really just exacerbates the problem when you're implementing a new ERP system.
Yeah, sometimes it seems like you would be surprised, but it seems that senior management is more interested in the tool, the system, than in the process that it should be supporting. But unless you have that one in place, then everything else becomes very difficult.
Yeah,
so I think it's a good point about the foundation. It's not only the foundation for your processes, but also the foundation for your systems and for your improvement initiatives and for everything else you do, more or less.
Exactly. Yeah. And as you can see on our website here for this step, that's what we do, all that, say, the behind the scenes stuff as the first thing, and then we move into the actual process mapping. And of course, we help you do that, both, of course, teach you how to use our platform to do it, but also just having that conversation with you and your colleagues about, so how do we turn this into a good process? We know the steps, but how should we map it to make it easy to follow for our colleagues, and just make the work instructions easy to understand, that kind of thing.
Lisa, question: when you have your process mapping workshop, how do you get beyond this discussion that always happens about notation? What is the format, and so on? Don't you get a lot of pushback from people saying, I want to do the swim lane horizontally, I want to do it vertically, I want to use these colors, I want to use these shapes? How do you get around that?
Well, there
insights.
There's it's true that there's always at least that one person that's very they have a very structured way of thinking, and they can only visualize processes in a certain way, and if it's not done like that, it's all wrong and it's no good. But in my experience, by not jumping straight into the tool and into process mapping, but doing all of the alignment first of expectations, we barely have any of those discussions, actually, because instead of focusing on the nitty-gritty formatting and layout stuff, what they're already more focused on from the basic training is how to get to a good process. And not only good for me, but good for everyone. So I might have some preferences, but if it doesn't work for other people, then it's not a good process. And then I won't get what I want anyway, because if it's not a good process, no one will follow it. And then we don't get any value from it.
Yeah, makes sense.
So let's maybe move on to the next level. Well, maybe I don't know.
I kind of list a little bit of a walkthrough quickly, sort of what we're seeing. So you have some workshops. We have some workshops where we are doing the basics, laying the foundation, and then people are mapping.
That's what I tried to say in a short version before, that we do the foundational stuff in the first couple of weeks, and from there we move into process mapping and teaching you how to use the tool and how to but also how to make a good process. So it's not all about the tool, it's also very much about getting that first process ready as a template.
So how many people would typically be involved in this in these maybe 8 to 12 weeks?
It actually varies quite a lot, because some people only have a couple of people, like a handful, 5 people participating, and I think the most we've done is 25. 25 is not normal. 5 is much more common.
Is everyone working with one process as a blueprint, or are they having each their own, or how's that?
If it's just 5 people, then one process is good. But if it's more than 5, we usually do 2 processes, and then that has the benefit of being able to compare the 2, and they can learn from each other because they have different approaches and input to the way they do the processes.
Yeah. And then what does that mean with operations when you just have one process?
Well, the whole idea is that we want to leave you with a template that you can model all of your other processes on. So that's why we're only doing one or a few processes at first. And once you decided on a good format for your processes, and you're familiar with the tool, and you're familiar with running improvement cycles, getting feedback from users, adjusting the process, then you have that template, and then you're ready to go and do process mapping on a bigger scale, multiple processes at a time.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess to summarize, you can say that people would be working with tools like process mapping tools, process architecture tools, maybe some Active Directory user sign up, some of the nitty-gritty stuff as well, right?
And that's one of the things that we offer for enterprise customers is, for instance, automatic user creation using their Active Directory. That was difficult for me to say, sorry. so that they don't have to maintain the users in Gluu. They can just use the sign-in that they use for all their other devices, Microsoft software.
Yeah.
That's one of the main benefits, I'd say, for the enterprise customers, that they have that option.
Yeah. So to summarize, the way I understand it also for the viewers, this will bring you to standard processes by having a common blueprint, so everybody knows how to do their own processes. But it's not necessarily getting you to having all your processes in a standardized format. But it starts off everybody to go out and start mapping processes, creating processes using the same tooling, the same method, the same standards, right? So that when you talk about the plan, that would be, let's say we have a big ERP project. So now in 1 month, we need 50 processes mapped. Well, then we know 10 teams. You map 5 each. That type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And we're happy to assist customers in making that plan if they need our help in doing it. But our main goal here is to make sure they're actually able to map lots of processes in a consistent way.
So I guess this is one service to help you get to this point, and then you could be stopping there, and you could be working on your own, but with your support or your team's support going forward. But then the next phase comes. Does that normally come straight after, or is there a gap? What do you typically see?
We typically see level 1 and 2 fairly close together. Because what comes in level 2 is say the integration of the rest of your organization in the process journey. You're onboarding the rest of the organization. So now you laid the foundation, you have all the tools you need, you have the templates, you have everything sorted out. And now you're getting to the next step, which is shared processes. And where level 1 makes sure that you have your process foundation in place, level 2 is focused on involving the rest of the organization. Because you cannot have only your PEX team working with processes, or only one department working with processes, and then succeed in your process journey. You need decentralized process owners and input from what we call the subject matter experts. That's just a fancy way of saying the people that actually work in the processes doing the work. You need their input to make sure that processes correspond to the reality of the business, and that their knowledge of problems and their great ideas for improvement flows seamlessly through the chain without PEX becoming your bottleneck all the time.
I think, Louise, that's a very important point you're making, because it ties back to the scalability of this whole thing. We see a lot of process excellence teams and out there that have failed because they kept it a little bit in the ivory tower. They were sitting a few people trying to keep hundreds of processes updated, and it became their processes. It was the PEX team's processes, and it was a completely different way of expressing how the company was working than the reality. And that is a huge pitfall, an error. So we are trying to build it in with this service, with this approach, to say that if you cannot scale if you want to do it all by yourself. Only if you can involve as many people as possible throughout your organization will you be able to scale this. Simply a matter of workload, because obviously, say, mapping 500 processes is easier if you have 50 people doing it than if you have 5. If you can orchestrate everybody working on the same foundation. So I just wanted to make that point. I think it's is maybe overlooked otherwise.
Yeah, it is. And I just have to say, you'll never be a process-driven organization if you do not involve the organization. If it's only the PEX team, then the PEX team can be very process mature, but the organization won't be, and then you cannot reach your goal of being process-driven. It's just not possible.
Yeah.
And I also think one thing that's very important there is to get the organization to take ownership of their own processes, because if you don't succeed in that, then instead of having your processes mapped in and documented in a SharePoint folder somewhere that no one ever looks at, or in a desk drawer on brown paper, it's just you don't gain any value from those processes. They're mapped and documented, but they're not alive in your organization. They're not. You have no idea whether they're being followed or not. So you need decentralized process ownership to make sure that the individual parts of your business take responsibility for their own processes.
Louise, maybe you could run us through some of the specific steps in this flow here that we see that you go through, just a little flavor for what it really is.
Sure.
Role training.
It's not about roles in swim lanes in processes. It's about understanding the role of the process owner in your organization. Again, we're back to the whole alignment of expectations. So in level 1, we try and help the core team lay out some guidelines for the process owners as well. That's establishing those guidelines is part of level 1.
What is the mandate of the process owner?
Exactly.
So the core team agrees maybe with management on the mandate and the structure, the governance, and then this is about training the next level, right? The training the trainers.
Exactly. So, and that's the first thing they need to do. They need to tell the process owners what is expected of you. What do you have to do? What is this role as a process owner all about? And once they understand that, we of course teach them how to map processes in Gluu and how to follow the standard format and layout that was also decided in level 1. And the process owners, they choose their one of their own processes, actual processes to map, and then we actually take them through a process mapping workshop as well. So they also get to learn by doing, the same way the core team did. Once they have their processes ready, or they feel like they're ready, they go out and they get user feedback from people working in the process, run a couple of improvement cycles, and adjust the processes as needed. And that's also a way to practice user engagement, actually, because Gluu as a tool is set up in a way that we try and help you with that part, with the user engagement, the involvement of the people actually working in the processes. And what we see in most organizations is that the process owners all by themselves, we don't even have to suggest it, realize that they would like to involve 1 or 2 of their subject matter experts to help them map their process. And getting to that realization is crucial at this step. You cannot just be sitting in your office mapping a process and then telling all your employees, this is the process, do it. That's not gonna go over very well with the employees.
So this is really a very agile way of working with processes, where you have a number of process owners working with their own processes, doing quick iterations, making a process work instructions, getting input from users, changing, and using those tools that we have to rapidly close the loop between a suggestion and a version. So you also get to this idea of these improvement cycles that you will continue once this implementation is done, right?
Exactly, and that's also one of our goals at this level, is to try and help the process owners understand that process improvement, it doesn't have to be this big huge thing where they take their employees out of their normal jobs for hours and hours, or maybe an entire day or week, to work on process improvements. They can just do it just a little bit at a time, because just small improvements every day or every week or every month also gets you somewhere. It's much better than blowing it completely out of proportion, because then it becomes this overwhelming thing that you never get around to doing, because you feel like, oh, we don't have the resources, we can't take employees out of their daily tasks for that many hours. But Gluu is set up to help you do the small improvements much more often.
The tools which tools are people then typically using through this phase?
They are using, of course, the possibility to add editors to their processes. So you have a process owner that can edit a process, but you can also assign editors. So they become your, say, a type of co-process owner. They can help you maintain the process. And then they use our suggestions and approval flow quite a lot. And the fact that Gluu has very easy change communication, we do that for you. It's automatic. Also helps them quite a lot. And I think the final tool I want to mention is components. We have a feature in Gluu called components that allow you to turn a certain word within a work instruction or an entire part of the work instruction into a reusable building block that you can use across your platform, across your processes, which makes your work much easier. Because say you turned your the name of a system into a component, and that system changes. Then in all the 50 places where you put the name of the system, if it's a component, you only need to change it in one place, and then it automatically corrects itself across all the other 50 places. So that's a very useful tool as well.
Yeah. So great. So now we have processes that are standard and shared, and now we need to execute them.
Yes.
So what is the objective of this particular phase?
Executed processes, I mean, once you've established your decentralized process ownership, then you're ready to move on to this level, because executing processes is a way of embedding them even deeper into your organization, getting not only process owners, but also just regular employees taking more responsibility of their own processes. And it's also a way to monitor that processes are actually being carried out the way it was intended. Because, when you've mapped your process and you've all agreed that this is the process, that's all well and good, but it can be very difficult to follow up on whether the practice in the business also changes when you change the process, or if it only changed on paper. Executing helps you with that, because it allows you to add tasks and what we call cases, which is basically just a chain of tasks linked together into your processes.
Would it be the same? Would it be all the same process owners now adding tasks, running their processes as workflows or cases, and then getting that last level? Yeah. So because that is also, I remember in the old days when we couldn't do all this, it's very hard to know and verify if things are actually done the way you should. And of course, for compliance reasons, you need this more and more.
Yeah.
So I guess this whole thing is really about what who is it? Some terrible dictator once said, "Trust is good, but control is better."
Well, that's not really the philosophy, I'd say, with the ability to execute tasks.
Well, we need it for
but
no matter what we like it or not. We need it for all kinds of compliance reasons, for government, for standards, for auditors. So I think anybody who really has this need, they also need to be able to master the actual execution, defined as being able to prove it, right?
Yeah, and what's really important at this step also is that all companies need to do task management, but it's just not very common that you're able to link it directly to the processes. It's usually done in a separate system, and then you have to maintain that. But in Gluu, you can do it all in one place. And the great thing about that is that you're generating a lot of data when you do that on how your processes are running. So it's not so much about the control part, it's more about what we can use all the things that we learn for. And it's also about making the lives of regular employees easier, because when they execute the processes, they do it in the same place, in a familiar system, same place where they find their work instructions.
Yeah, it's funny because some of the customers we work with, they don't have a process excellence team. They are smaller. They are most interested in executing things, controlling things. So, for instance, a contractor in the construction industry, they may actually get consultants to set up a best practice, just one process, and run it through, where we do a little bit of a tailored service just to start running and executing a single production process, because it's their whole value chain, is the most important thing in the company. And they want to cut out all the steps to go here, because it doesn't matter for them right now. They just want the result of their made to order production or their construction work getting done on time, right? So that's a bit of a different angle.
And we offer different tools in Gluu to help you do this. For instance, there's an app for frontline employees where they don't get all the process diagrams, all the swim lanes, all of that. They just get their work instructions and their tasks and the ability to comment. And there are, of course, different reporting options as well as part of our enterprise services. So you can work with the data that you're collecting.
Yeah. So the structure you have presented, Louisa, I can see now that we are going to the first 3 phases, that it's all a question of always some kind of foundations, a little bit of theory, then some practice, and then getting it integrated in their daily work, because that's what really matters, right? That you actually end up with operational improvement in your company and not just another tool. Yeah.
Exactly. It's just so important that the processes become a tool that help regular employees in their daily work. Because if you can achieve that with your processes, then you will also be absolutely certain that they're actually being carried out. They're a help to your company, and it's a way of improving and spotting and solving problems, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and I think this is also where things become really tangible, concrete for people. Sometimes you may have your process becomes a fixed asset management application where you're registering new equipment, making sure you're doing the proper servicing of it. The same thing with your claims handling, whatever. This is really when the rubber hits the road and people feel that now they have kind of designed their own little application by running their process more or less, right?
Yeah, very true. And as I saw one of the viewers commenting that it's turning the process into a tool for everyday tasks is important, because making sure that when you're working with explosives that you don't cross the red and blue wire,
Yeah.
one of our viewers said, is quite important. And it's a clever way of saying you need to turn them into something that's used in everyday work. If your processes are not used in everyday work, then you're not realizing the full potential of them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So let's move on to the next step. So now we are running our processes. Great. So then we are slowly progressing towards a process-driven organization, right? And I guess this is where we're going into a little bit our customer success program that you are heading up, right, Louisa?
Yeah.
So what happens when, let's say, a large company has done level 1, level 2, level 3, and now they're a bit on their own, or are they?
Only if they choose to be. We don't just let them do their own thing and see if they can succeed on their own. We offer them to become part of our customer success journey with us. And what's in that journey is regular follow-ups and status meetings. We with most our enterprise customers, we meet up every 2 weeks or once every month, just for a 30-minute check-in where we talk about what they're working on in Gluu, how we can support them in that. If they have any issues, if there's a new feature coming out, we share that with them. If it's something we think could be interesting for them, give them ideas on how to implement it in the best possible way as well. And we help them progress in their process journey that way. And then we also do biannual or annual status meetings with a more strategic focus. And we invite management to these meetings as well, because what we want to do here is talk to the customer about their more long-term overall goals with process work, and where they would like to be in 6 months or a year from now, and how we can support them in that journey.
Yeah, and also we are both joining many of them, and it's also, I guess, to make sure that our product roadmap is as aligned as it can be with the agendas of our customers, so that we are supporting and building exactly the tooling that can help them realize their process ambitions, so to speak. Yeah, great.
Very true.
Well, maybe we should look at a real case, just as an example. It's a case, I know you know the case very well now, but it was I originally started the case, so I can take over a little bit and show it. In this case, just to show you a little bit of an example of what we've been talking about. The situation a few years back was that a large telco, it's about 4,000 people, their management team was looking for better ways to integrate new acquisitions, realize synergies, and their answer was really to establish this common foundation of business processes. And they had already established a process excellence team, and they were using another BPM tool, but they were struggling, to be frank, with this ivory tower approach. They had defined a lot of processes. They were a little bit complex, maybe, because they were defined by experts in an expert environment. And so they had failed to engage their co-workers, their colleagues. And this meant that every time they were going to be using the processes in practice, there was always a gap between the process map and the practice. So they always had to go out and sort of map again, and that meant improvement projects, IT projects. Everybody always had to do it all over again. And then the whole point of having the common processes wasn't really there. So they realized that to do this, to make this foundation, they needed a different approach, and that's when we were found in a selection process, and we started a journey. And just to go through some of that journey, we went through the first 2 phases that Louisa was explaining fairly quickly. It took approximately the time we talked about. Just it's mostly the availability of the core people in the organization, because in practice, if you have the time in the organization, you can run this in just a few weeks, because it's mostly some workshops, training, and some homework. But then throughout the first year, they were working on establishing governance. This meant really getting all the process owners trained. They had also a role called, they still have, I think, right? Process ambassadors. So they actually have quite an advanced approach to not only process owners, but process ambassadors. And these people are scattered throughout the business. So they have some common knowledge from the process excellence team, and a common standard, a common method, working the same way, but each in their respective business areas. And then from that point on, when this governance was fully established, everybody was trained in the same way. A lot of processes were mapped. Then they started the full rollout to employees with the objective of really trying to lower the risk in the business. And that was mostly targeting processes that are high risk, that really need to be in order, in place for compliance reasons. But then the year after, the agenda was very much on process improvement, because now the foundation was in place. They were slowly building up their process catalog, their architecture, to more than 1,000 processes. And at that point, they started working with improvement. And obviously, when you work with improvement, and this is also, I think, what they have realized, a lot of it is done simply by engaging people in understanding the difference between the process map, the documentation, and the reality. Because if you do those improvement loops that Louisa has been talking about, then you are gradually improving both the documentation, which becomes a real baseline for work, but also helping to disseminate best practices in the team that are improving certain things. One person is doing something a bit smarter than the other one, well, they can learn from each other, and then that becomes a bit of a best practice. So they were working with that, connecting with systems. And now we know, I think it should have said 2024, because we have actually just visited.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now the agenda is very much about realizing the value potential, and this is about KPIs, numbers, dollars and cents or euros and cents. So now it's really about taking it to the next level, where you can really document savings, document efficiency gains, all the classic stuff. So it has taken some time to get there, but given the scale they have here, it's still. I was personally, I'm much more impatient by nature, so I felt these things took long, but I do see more and more the value in a large organization of laying a good foundation, getting everybody on board, and a little bit like the industrial mindset, getting everybody on board the bus before you take off, to say that. So we're really seeing a lot of progress now that they invested, and now this is informing their improvement projects. Everybody is on board, and suddenly every new project, whether it's an ERP project or something else, it starts from a much higher level than what was the case in the past, where months were lost in trying to establish the baseline, the assist process. So this is, I think, here it really is a good example of what happens when you get to a maturity level of I wouldn't even say they're mostly at shared processes, because executed processes in such a large organization often happens in other systems. In some cases, Gluu is maybe used to make sure that these end-to-end processes are actually done. But it is mostly about a full foundation of shared processes, right? You have something to add, Louise, to this?
Yeah, I'm really impressed by the journey this customer has been on, because they have done an excellent job in decentralizing process ownership. They have process owner networks that come together in different constellations, and they did a really good job on this. Very impressive. In terms of process maturity, they're also a very good example of what happens for most organizations, because they thought they would be much farther along after the first year of working with processes. But one of the drivers of their process journey that we talk to at our status meetings every 2 weeks, she often describes it, the whole process maturity journey, by saying, well, we started out having our goals set, and we had our timeline, and we were just all ready and so excited, and we were on the shore, we had the ship ready to go, and we all got on board, and we sailed towards our goal, full speed ahead. Then after 3 months, I looked back and I realized half the people were gone. They were not on board the ship anymore. We lost them at an island somewhere. Then we had to circle back and pick them up and continue towards our goal, full speed ahead. Then 3 months later, the same thing happened. We lost half of them again. And I think that's a very good way of describing what it's actually like working with process maturity in a large organization. You need to be patient, and you need to invest the time and resources needed. But if you do that, then you can achieve amazing things. They're a testament to that, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, I think it has been a great talk. Maybe we should wrap it up a bit. We talked a little bit about some of the enterprise services, but of course we haven't talked about all the nitty-gritty details, that a special service level agreement and what it means. It doesn't lend itself too well for a webinar. We haven't also talked about all our enterprise features. And for instance, we provided now facilities to show your process value chain, your house, whatever visual presentation you want people to use as a gateway to processes, but also things like we're working more and more with permission groups, with user profiles, to allow a large organization to use the same process, the same tool, but having very different user experiences across the board, so that everybody gets the maximum degree of personalization, and we keep the things super simple for the end users. This has been a big win. We have found that some people will be working inside the process or in the process, and others will be working with the process, and that's a very different mindset for the user. Also working on, more and more companies are putting in a lot of information in their Active Directory, their authentication system. Of course, we can use that information to really say inside Gluu what roles, what rights, what permission groups should they be granted. So those type of things. But maybe, Louisa, we should just wrap it up here now. I know you are there with all the knowledge of all the detail. If anybody has any questions, and we'll put this recording on still here on LinkedIn or LinkedIn, I think even also now on Facebook and on YouTube, in case you want to share. We'll look forward to continuing the conversation.
I just want to say, maybe it's worth mentioning that if you're already on your process journey and you're already working in Gluu, you could still benefit from some of the levels. Then we won't start from the very beginning. We'll just jump in where you're at on the process maturity ladder, and help you grow toward your goal of being process driven.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, that sometimes quite an inexperienced organization go through this, and sometimes it's very experienced, but that means you have more time to focus on other things if they're very experienced, right? So you can just make sure you check through that everything is covered, but not necessarily go through the meticulous details of mapping a process if they just aligning a little bit on the convention, right? Yeah.
Exactly. For instance, we sometimes see customers that did the level 1 and level 2 training a long time ago. They come back to us saying, okay, now we think we're ready to go to executing our processes. So could you please help us with that? And then we help them through that stage as well, or at least get them started well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great. Well, let's wrap it up. Hope people found it interesting, and let's be in touch and have fun out there. Thanks. Bye.
Bye, everyone.